In the corridors of modern times, shadows cast themselves over unforgettable stories narrated by troubled souls and horrifying human actions. Denis Rader, the enigmatic and quiet man, is considered one of the boldest and most terrifying figures in the history of American crime.
Police in Wichita, Kansas are investigating the possible return of a serial killer
who calls himself BTK resurfaces after 25 years.
The peaceful city of Santa Cruz, California, was the stage for his wicked deeds, as a series of crimes began that shook America and terrified its inhabitants. In this video, we will delve into Denis Rader's journey from mystery to horror, immersing ourselves in the depths of the serial killer's mind to discover what lies behind the events. During his teenage years, Rader had a violent side to his personality. He confessed to hanging and torturing stray animals. His criminal career began in January 1974 in Wichita, Kansas. One winter day, his pregnant wife Paula was asleep with their first child. Denis went for a walk in the neighborhood and then broke into the Otero family's house. He brutally murdered all 4 of the family members present in the house out of 5 in a gruesome manner. He forced the 2 children to watch as he strangled their parents to death. The 9-year-old girl screamed, "Mommy, I love you," while Denis choked her to death without mercy. He then dragged the young girl to the basement, undressed her, and hung her underwear from the sewer pipe. Her last words were a question, "What's going to happen to me?" To which he calmly replied, "Well, my dear, tonight you'll be in heaven with the rest of your family." As the girl choked to death, he engaged in necrophilia, and then he took photographs of the bodies and collected some of the young girl's underwear as a memento of his first massacre. After that, he returned home to his wife, preparing to go to church as the head of the church council, as if nothing had happened. The crime was discovered when the 5th member of the Otero family returned home. Charlie, the eldest son, found a horrifying scene. All the members of his family tied up with ropes. Since the killer had cut the landline, Charlie had to go to the neighbors to call the police. When the police sent the bodies to the forensic lab, the results were shocking. The assault on the mother had been discovered. The crime was shocking to both the residents and the police due to its brutality. Wichita was a peaceful area in the 1970s, free from crime. However, after Denis committed this crime, the area transformed into one of the most terrifying regions. The police preserved the evidence and DNA to try to apprehend the criminal. 4 months later, a woman named Catherine and her 19-year-old brother Kevin returned home at 2 p.m. As they entered the house, they discovered the killer in the bedroom. He informed them that he was on the run and didn't want to harm them, but needed food and a getaway car. He asked Kevin to tie up his sister with ropes. After Kevin tied his sister, he resisted the killer and managed to grab the weapon from him. However, at the last moment, Denis regains control of the weapon and shoots Kevin in the head. After finishing Kevin, he approached Catherine and strangled her. She tried to resist, but her efforts were in vain. He then stabbed her 4 times, causing fatal wounds. At this moment, Kevin managed to escape from the house and call for help from passerby. This caused tension for the killer and prompted him to flee the crime scene. An ambulance arrived and attempted to save Catherine, but she had already passed away due to the stab wounds. Kevin was rescued but remained in critical condition in the intensive care unit for several months. By the grace of God, he survived. When the police questioned Kevin, he could only provide limited information about the perpetrator, mentioning that he was a white man and providing some details about his face. The police connected the 2 crimes. But the surprising thing for the police was the appearance of 3 men who confessed to committing that crime. Indeed, the police arrested them, and the news was published in the media, which relieved the residents of the area, and the fear began to dissipate. However, the residents and the police did not have long-lasting peace. The police received a message from an unknown person describing the crime in detail that only the criminal himself could know. He informed them that he was the killer, and that he would continue to kill, with many victims. Denis stopped killing for 3 years after his wife informed him that she was pregnant. During that period of his absence, the police thought it was over, that the killer had traveled to another city or had been captured somewhere far from this city. But Denis returned in March 1977 and headed to a house dressed in military attire. He rang the doorbell, and a little child opened the door and let him in. When the mother came out of one of the rooms in the house, she was surprised to find a large muscular person inside her home, threatening her with a weapon. He locked the child and his two siblings in the bathroom, closing the door. Then, he told the mother that he was there for robbery only and that he would not harm her or her children. He made her feel calm and tied her up as he had done with his previous victims, intending to make her suffocate and then let her regain consciousness only to strangle her again, until she died in the end. Her young children watched her from one of the openings in the bathroom door and screamed in fear for their mother. Suddenly, the home phone rang, causing the criminal to become agitated and flee. When the police arrived, all the residents stood near the crime scene, witnessing the emergence of the bodies in horror and panic. On December 8, 1977, when Nancy, a 25-year-old woman, returned from her work at a jewelry store, she lay down on her bed to rest, and suddenly, a man appeared before her, coming out of the bathroom. He told her that he would not harm her, that he had problems, and that he would not cause her any harm. However, he wanted her to restrain herself so that he could make sure she would not inform the police after he left the house. Nancy complied with his demand out of fear, thinking that once she was restrained, the criminal would leave without harming her. But as usual, he began to assault her while she was bound and then strangled her to death. But this time, he did not flee the crime scene. His narcissistic personality began to emerge. After killing Nancy, he called the police and informed them about the complete crime, stating that the killer was BTK.
Yes, you will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing, Nancy Fox.
The police realized that they were dealing with a serial and savage killer who had an arrogant and conceited personality. In 1987, the killer sent a letter to a famous television station. The letter contained detailed confessions about all his crimes and victims. It was filled with gruesome details about these crimes and included a set of photographs of his victims. He requested that the channel give him the attention he deserved and publish information about him and his crimes. After his murder of Nancy and his message to the television station, he stopped killing again, leading the police to believe that the crimes had ended or that he had left the area, died, or was in prison. To the surprise of the police in 1985, the criminal returned and killed a 51-year-old woman named Marlyn. After killing her, he dragged her body to a church and posted it in various explicit positions inside the church. This caused astonishment to everyone, as how could the criminal enter the church with a dead body? Also, the police have not yet obtained any information leading them to the killer. He ceased committing murders for another time, but in 2004, he came across a story in the local newspaper commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Otero family murders. He wanted to make the BTK killer known again, so he sent approximately 10 mocking letters to the media and the police, informing them that he was still present and demanding their attention. Some of the letters were filled with recollections of his killings, and some contained bound and gagged dolls resembling his victims. One of them even included a proposal for a novel about his autobiography, titled The BTK Story. Due to the lack of any leads that the police could use to identify the killer, they resorted to commercializing his actions, hoping that he would make a mistake that would allow them to capture him. Indeed, he sent a floppy disk without realizing the technological advancements, and through this disk, the police discovered descriptive metadata of a deleted document related to the Lutheran Christ Church, written by the church council president, Denis Rader. The police kept this information confidential and obtained DNA samples from the fingernails of one of his victims, which they were able to match with a cervical swab previously taken by his daughter. When they received a positive result, Rader was arrested in his home in front of his family on February 25, 2005. He tried to maintain a calm and composed demeanor, embraced his daughter, and promised her that everything would be over soon. During the search of his house, a collection of magazines containing crime stories filled with murder and assaults were found, as well as photographs and mementos of his victims. There was also a picture of him dressed in women's clothing and a mask, pictures of himself using a ligature to bind himself in the same manner he executed his crimes, and pictures of himself burying himself in the ground and hanging himself from a tree. It became clear to the police that his wife and children had no knowledge of these possessions or pictures, and his arrest was a shock to his family and everyone around him. How could this loving father, the religious man who helped others and faithfully attended church, be the serial killer who instilled fear in the hearts of those around him, including his own family. In the police car, he didn't attempt to hide anything. When asked by the officer if he knew why he was being arrested, he smiled coldly and replied, "Oh, I have suspicions as to why." He confessed to the 10 murders he had committed, and he seemed to take great pleasure in describing all the gruesome details of how he carried out his crimes during his trial. The killer Dennis Rader, also known as BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, was sentenced to 175 years in prison without the possibility of parole. He escaped the death penalty solely because Kansas did not have the death penalty during the 17 years of his crime spree. After Dennis was apprehended, his family was shocked and couldn't handle the revelation. When the horrifying truth emerged, his wife refused to set foot in their home again and divorced him upon his confession to the crimes. The family tried to maintain silence during the trial, and there was no explanation for why he committed these crimes. He attributed his actions to being possessed by demons. The media accused his wife of knowing more than she admitted and protecting her husband, disregarding the evidence. His daughter especially resented him when he sent a message to the newspaper about her, saying she reminds me of myself. According to his testaments during the investigation, he experienced sexual gratification when he strangled his victims in front of him, and whenever he saw a beautiful woman, it triggered images of murder and strangulation, and he could not stop himself from killing them. In his questioning during the investigations about his method of targeting victims, he confirmed that he chose them carefully, observed them more than once, and had alternatives in case he failed to capture one of them. He carried a bag containing tools for killing and torture, including a knife, a gun, and a duct tape. In the end, Dennis Rader's crimes remain one of the most famous cases in the history of crime in the United States. His story has been used in numerous movies and books that delve into real crime stories. He was placed on the list of the top 10 most dangerous criminals in America. Finally, we hope you enjoyed the video. And remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the notification bell to receive more crime stories.